All right, it's time for another Should You Read. I've got like a whole list of them, but this is our next one. And this is the Convergence Saga by Cadwell Turnbull. And yeah, I'm very excited to discuss this trilogy. Well, I'm going to argue it's not a trilogy. I'm going to argue it's a quartet. Regardless, I'm excited. And also, a few days after this video posts, or if you're seeing this after the fact, there'll be a link in the description. I have an interview with the author about why he made the decisions he did. It is fairly spoiler-free, except for the very end, which I do have marked off. So if you want to know about why he made the decisions he did, what inspired him, it was a delight chatting with him. So we have all of that content. And so yeah, per usual, my Should You Reads, spoiler-free review to let you know, are these books worth your time, money, etc. So let's start with just my experience. For the last couple years, I have known of this author, and I've wanted to read his works. And in my Discord, I have a bunch of people with similar tastes to me who have just been so excited for me to read No Gods, No Monsters, which is the first book in the series. And I always knew that I would, but I wanted to wait for the third book, which is coming out this month when you're seeing this video, or if it's in the future, it's already out. So this summer I decided, yeah, let's read this. So when I went on a trip earlier this summer to Spain, I made sure No Gods, No Monsters was on my Kindle. And then annoyingly, I didn't have access to the audiobook because of Wi-Fi problems. But it's whatever, because on my flight back, and if you don't know, these flights back can take like 9 hours sometimes, I just had time, and I read that whole book in one day. And that's like a 300-page book, and I never do that. And then flash forward a few weeks, I decided to read The Lesson, which is not technically in this series, but we're going to talk about why I would highly recommend you read The Lesson. And then I just picked up the audiobook for The Lesson, and then I just listened to all of that in a day, in a work day. Like in between classes and stuff like that. I was so engrossed. And so now we're 2 for 2 on an author where I read books in a day. Now, I did not do that with the last 2 books, but needless to say, I've read all 4 of his novels in 3 months and quickly has, gone up my ranks of auto-buy authors that I need to see what they're doing. And in that interview, he talks about what he's going to do next, and I am like, I'm excited. I won't tell you what it is, but I'm very excited. So that's my experience, and that's the bias that I bring to the table. It's obviously tailor-made for me and my taste, which means if you know my taste, you already kind of know that, like, yeah, maybe you should try this out. But say you found me through a search function, you don't know who I am, we're going to get into this. So what is this at its core? What is the Convergence Saga about? It is our contemporary world, but there are magical societies. So this is something we've done a lot. Buffy, Charmed, there's the... what is it called? The Dresden Files. Like, we have magical society, urban fantasy, all the time. This is not going to feel like those, okay? It has monsters that we're familiar with, like vampires and werewolves and things like that. But it definitely just, like, plot-wise and purpose-wise just doesn't feel like those works, okay? It is at its core what happens when the magical societies are revealed to the average person. How does the world change? What do these magical creatures do as a response? What do these other people that don't have magical abilities or are not considered monsters do? Etc. So that's what this trilogy is about, starting with No Gods, No Monsters being the book where it's like everyone learns that there are monsters, okay? Now, I've kind of segmented off my next thoughts into character work, world building, and plot, and then we're going to end with The Lesson and why I think you should also read The Lesson and where I would maybe read that in the series if you really feel comfortable with wanting a suggested reading order. But in terms of character work, this is my favorite part and why I feel it's pretty tailor-made to me. It's kind of a tapestry mosaic quality. You definitely get to know all of these characters, but you're not going to come into this book with standard, this is my cast of characters, these are my heroes, they are the protagonists to drive my story. It's not really as clear-cut as that, and it's not paced that way. So I think in a normal multi-POV story, you're kind of switching every chapter to a different POV, and you know you're going to get back to that first character, etc. And then in a, just a single POV book, you just have them the whole time to follow. Here, it's more like you have parts and chunks. So like for 80 pages, you're with this set of people. For another 80 pages, you're with this set of people, and etc. And then it does all converge together. Like these ties, if you trust the process, they all intersect and come together. And I do think even though it's a little more fragmented, you don't get to have like a person or like a core group to follow, I really did feel like I got to know these people and their motivations and why they are struggling with what they're struggling with, why they want to accomplish what they want to accomplish, especially because you get so many quiet moments, okay? Like, I love quiet moments, and you get a bunch of that in this series. We're going to come back to that when I get to talking about the plot, but I do feel the character work is really good, but it's going to be different than I feel what you're used to. The closest I can think of, even though it's not even remotely like this, is Malazan and then Girl, Woman, Other, which I know those are two very different books, but it's this idea that the community matters. Karen Lord also does this a lot. I also feel like Nayla Hopkinson does this a lot, where it's not about necessarily the people, even though you get to know them. It's about the community that they are a part of. It's this tapestry that you're looking at, which is just my bread and butter. I love that. Okay. Now, world building. This is my second reason why this series is made for me. I loved learning about this world. Oh, it was so interesting. Like, you start off with a unique narrative framework, okay? Which, again, I love that. So you start off following this man, and he's just going through a normal, regular conversation. He's moving back home, just talking to someone. And then we're not with him anymore. But then we kind of keep getting, like, we end a scene, and then we have a voice. And it's his voice. And you're like, what is happening here? And that's very intriguing to me. And in both, at least the first two books, there is an intriguing, wait, what's happening? And so not only am I intrigued by these characters, I like following them, I like learning about their past, learning about their communities, but I also have this world building mystery, this whole what's going on quality to it, which I found really engaging. And I do think that's also a part of the third book. I just felt it more strongly in the first two. Okay? Now, also, these monsters, these gods, these people, they're from it's a global situation. So I mentioned vampires and werewolves because we have those. But we also have folklore from the US Virgin Isles, because that's where the author's from and where a lot of the characters are from. Some of them are kind of a mishmash of creatures. Some of them are directly pulled. Some of them are creatures he made up himself. It's a global story. It's a very involved, broad picture. And if anything, he wanted to make it more, but he didn't want to, like, do too much world building and not focus on the plot, I guess. I don't know. I could have taken more. But it was very cool. The other thing I want to bring up that I think is pretty unique. So I think a lot of times when you have this whole society crisis point and things need to change or evolve or problem solve, we kind of get stuck in ruts with certain systems. You know, we always have rebellions, we always have civil unrest, we have democracy we're going towards, etc., etc. But something he explores and, like, adds into the pot are co-ops, which I knew very little about. I learned a lot about them while reading these books. And I really liked how he kind of kept influencing that in there and how he kept using that as a vehicle for problem solving for our communities and characters as they're going through these tumultuous times. I thought that was really cool, and especially in this day and age where I feel like maybe a lot of us are grasping for how do we fix our situation. This circumstance we're in doesn't feel tenable, it doesn't feel sustainable. It's cool getting to see someone imagine, like, ways that we already have, but seeing it on larger scales. I thought that was really cool. So that's the world building stuff. And like I said, with the plot, you get day-to-day life. You get the quiet moments. But each book has bombastic climaxes, almost to the point where, like, I'm overwhelmed. But if you trust the process, the climaxes are tense. There's different types of climaxes in all three books, and they are everything's coming together. And they are action-packed. So if you like some action with your quiet moments, you do get both of them in this story. And like I said, for me, the fun part is watching how everything intersects with each other. But that brings us to The Lesson. The Lesson is a standalone book. It is technically not a part of this series, but I highly recommend that you read it before the third book in the Convergence saga. I don't know what it would be like to read the third book in the Convergence saga without The Lesson. Could be that it's fine. It could be, but I do think a lot of things make more sense if you've read The Lesson, because there are point of views that are added to A Ruin Great and Free that are directly taking from point of views that we met in The Lesson. So in the lesson, we leave our characters at a certain point, and now some of those characters' arcs continue in a Ruined, Great, and Free. Now, that's to say, it makes more sense to me knowing what they're doing because I know what they've been through. But if you don't know what they've been through, maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know. I also just love the lesson, and it's only 280 pages. Now, the lesson is about an alien invasion in the U.S. Virgin Isles and how they deal with that. Especially, it's very similar. It's a tapestry of characters. It's quiet moments and a bunch of action. It's his debut, and I love it. Like, I think No Gods, No Monsters and the lesson are my favorite, hands down. So for that reason, though, in terms of just character, latching onto them, understanding why they're doing what they're doing, where they're coming from, I feel like the lesson is important to have. I don't think there's a point you need to read it other than before the third book. I happened to read it after No Gods, No Monsters just because that's what I had on hand, but you do not have to. You could read it before the whole trilogy, you could read it after the second book, you could read it after the first book. The only reason why I'd read it after the first book, not only because I did it, is because the second book has like a bit of a cliffhanger, and you're probably going to want to read the third book. That's what I did. I finished the second book, was anticipating going to read something else, and then come back to the series, and then I just was like, nope, I have the arc right now, I'm just going to start reading it, because I really needed to know what it was doing. So yeah, I think this is a really fun series. I think it really blends thematic, nuance, quiet moments. Like, it's very intentional in that work around a very fun, familiar sci-fi fantasy genre blend. And for me, that's my bread and butter. I love when I can have fun, but also be slightly challenged. I really like when we toe that line. So if you're someone also looking for that type of work, you should really try this out. It's really good. And if you want to maybe just start with one book, you can start with The Lesson or No Gods, No Monsters. I think No Gods, No Monsters has a good resting point. You can definitely see where the series has to go from there, but you're not going to be like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Like, you know where we've landed. And like I said, The Lesson is pretty much a standalone. Once you've read We Are the Crisis, you're probably going to want to read it, Ruined, Great, and Free. Also, the covers are stunning. Like, they're absolutely stunning. I really love them. Anyways, that's my Should You Read for this series. Let me know if you have anything you would like to add for prospective readers, spoiler-free. Per usual, if there's any spoiler comments, I'm just going to delete them. And if you have any other questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. I'll answer to the best of my ability. And if you just want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here, leave a wolf. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.